Director Clapper and General Stewart, thank you both for your service to our country, and we most certainly appreciate the participation that you have in this meeting today. In October of last year, the U.S. Naval Institute published a rather chilling article detailing the long list of advanced weaponry that the Chinese military has cloned by stealing from other nations, either through cyber espionage or reverse engineering. What roles do you see the intelligence agencies taking to prevent this hemorrhaging of American technological advantage?
Well, I think it's our responsibility to ensure that our policymakers, and particularly the Department of Defense, are aware of this hemorrhage, if you will, of technological information that the Chinese purloined. So I think our duty, our obligation as from the intelligence community standpoint is to make sure people know about this, and where we can, suggest ways to try to stop it.
General Stewart?
I don't know if I could add anything more to that. We detect, we get an appreciation, understanding of the threat vectors, we inform, and if we can, we provide some potential solutions. Then becomes up to those who have the technology, who have been threatened, their intellectual property threatened, to take those countermeasures. So I think we identify, we warn, we report, and it's over to the users.
Would you both, with regard to the tools that you have available today, do you have the appropriate equipment, tools, and technology to be able to detect and report these attacks?
Yes, we do, but I do think, and this gives me an opportunity for maybe a small commercial, that we do sustain our R&D. This is particularly important for, well, all the IC, but particularly NSA, that we stay ahead of cyber technological developments in the world domain for foreign intelligence purposes, to stay abreast of these.
What do you believe constitutes an act of war in cyberspace? What do you assess it would look like? When does it become an act of war?
That's a great question, Senator. That one that we've wrestled with at a certain extent. It's, I guess, it's in the eye of the beholder. And this gets to the whole issue of cyber deterrence and all those kind of complex questions. But I think that's a determination that would almost have to be made on a case-by-case basis, depending on the impact.
So if we were to suggest that it was time to define what an act of war in cyberspace would be, it would not be appropriate, or should we be looking at clearly defining what an act of war constitutes with regard to cyber activity? Would that be helpful or not?
I think it would be extremely helpful to have clear definitions of what constitutes cyber events versus acts of war. We generally look at all cyber events and we define it as an attack. In many cases, you can do reconnaissance, you can do espionage, you can do theft in this domain we call cyberspace. But the reaction always is, whether it's an adversary doing reconnaissance, an adversary trying to conduct human operations in this domain, we define it as an attack, and I don't think that's terribly helpful. So if we can get a much fuller definition of the range of things that occur in cyberspace, and then start thinking about the threshold where an attack is catastrophic enough or destructive enough that we define that as an act of war, I think that would be extremely useful.
Have we done enough or a sufficient job in deterring cyber aggression?
I think we have a pretty robust capability to understand the adversaries. I think most potential adversaries understand that we have a capability. Whether or not we are ready to use that, because that's the essence of deterrence. that an adversary actually feels that we'll use the capability that we have. I'm not sure we're there yet, and that goes beyond our ability to understand and to counter with military capabilities. So I think there's another dimension of convincing from a policy standpoint that we're willing to use that capability.
Wouldn't it be a good idea to have a policy, General? As I understand it, we have no policy as to whether we should deter, whether we should respond, whether, if so, how. Wouldn't it be good if we had a policy?
Mr. Chairman, I always find it good to have a policy that guides the things that I can do as a military officer.
I think that's not a earth-shaking comment, to tell you the truth. I don't think we'll stop the presses. The fact is, we don't have a policy. And I don't know how you act when there's no policy as to how we respond to threats or actual acts of penetration into some of our most sensitive information. Senator Sullivan.